Both the Protestant Reformation and the Scientific Revolution challenged the absolute authority of the Pope. The Reformation challenged it on religious grounds, while the Scientific Revolution challenged it on scientific and mathematical grounds. Divine right stated that a king was not ruling based on any earthly authority. It is because of this that a king wasn't subject to the will of the people, the aristocracy, or any other estate of the realm, including the church. The mandate of heaven was similar in that it involved religion. It stated that heaven would bless the authority of a just ruler, but would be displeased with an unjust ruler and would withdraw their mandate. The mandate of heaven would then go to those who would rule best. Romans, Mongols, and Muslims either allowed existing cultural traditions or converted to their way of doing things. In America, the natives were either killed or forced to leave. This is different because in other places, the originating people were allowed to stay, but they were just forced to comply with what the conquerors told them to do. The Aztecs and Incas were completely wiped out, and huge cities were depopulated. Millions of Africans were forced to migrate, and the middle class got rich with trade. The world became truly global. The Western Hemisphere came into continued contact with the Eastern Hemisphere. Technological innovations, strengthened political organization, and economic prosperity all contributed to this change that completely altered world trade patterns. Maritime trade dominated the world, and European kingdoms gained world power. A vigorous slave trade from Africa began and continued throughout most of the era.
During the 17th century, two very different types of government developed in Europe. In France, Louis XIV established an absolutist state, while in England, Elizabeth I followed a parliamentary government. Even though Louis XIV and Elizabeth I saw brilliant flourishing in their kingdoms, only one of them had the power to rule successfully. Louis XIV ruled by divine right and had absolute control of his kingdom during his long reign. He took several steps to assure his authority above everyone in France. In England, the move was away from the absolute monarch and toward a more powerful parliament. In France, the opposite was happening with Louis XIV, strengthened his own office while weakening the General Assembly of France, the Estates General. A civil war between Protestants and Catholics devastated France until the Edict of Nantes in 1598 granted toleration for Protestant practices. Wars raged periodically among the German states. The most important of these conflicts was the 30 Years' War. When it ended with the Treaty of Westphalia, it was agreed that each ruler might determine the religion of his own state. Spain, an ally of the Catholic German princes, also lost power in Europe as a result of the war. France replaced Spain as the most powerful European nation. England emerged as winner in European balance of power and on the basis of their powers at sea. France was the most powerful on the continent. The wars drained Spain's treasury and its ability to maintain a massive army.
Western civilization changed dramatically between 1450 and 1750. While remaining an agricultural society, the West became very commercially active. Many of the core areas of the West transformed. Governments increased their powers, science became the centerpiece of intellectual life, and ideas on family and marriage changed. These changes resulted from overseas expansion and increasing commercial dominance. Russia, on the other hand, was heavily concerned with territorial expansion, eventually becoming the chief power of Eastern Europe. Peter I and Catherine were important because they positioned Russia for engagement with the rest of the world. It gained sea access to the west by the Baltic and Black Seas. They also got cultural access to the west. Under Peter I, there was military reform. He built the army by offering better pay and also drafted peasants for service as professional soldiers. He also created a navy by importing Western engineers and craftsmen to build ships, and other experts to teach naval tactics. Of course, his gunpowder empire developed better weapons and military skills. Peter I organized peasants to work on roads and do other service for the government. He moved his court from Moscow to a new location on the Baltic Sea, his window to the west that he called St. Petersburg. China and India both allowed trade and occupation of ports. China then began to limit trade under the Manchu. Japan traded with Europe to acquire guns and reacted most decisively to European aggression. The exploration of Asia by the Europeans was an early attempt to open up China and Japan after the Mongol takeover. China overall rejected the Europeans and what trade they had to offer, but they did have connections with the Jesuits, not because of the spread of Christianity, but because they were a beneficial way to access technologies from Europe. Japan, on the other hand, wasn't very sought after for trading due to its location. The Dutch came into contact with the Japanese and became their only trade partners, besides the Chinese. The exploration of North America by European countries led to colonization and integration with the natives instead of a complete takeover like what happened in South America. The territory was mostly controlled by Britain and France, while Spain controlled Mexico, which was mostly considered Central America. What is now Canada was also under French control. The British sent people over to colonize the east coast of what is now the United States and pushed out the Amerindians. Eventually, in the southern parts of North America, the slave trade caught on and large plantations emerged, similar to what happened in South America.
The exploration of South America by the Spanish and Portuguese led to an almost complete enslavement of the natives. The Portuguese, specifically for the first half of the period, created sugar plantations with the Amerindian workers and African slaves. Their ships were loaded with cash crops that were to be used or sold. Over the times, the natives were completely replaced with Africans. Exploration in Africa led to heavy trade. At first, Europeans didn't set up colonies and trade posts on the coast and had African trade with them from there. After the gold and other resources were whisked away by Europeans, the only trade left for them was to sell their own men, as there was a demand for them in the Americas for labor. This led to the slave trade and created a triangle trade between America, Europe, and Africa. European exploration of the world led to a completely beneficial situation for all sides. Countries like Portugal, Spain, Holland, Britain, and France became empires due to exploration. Though the economic benefits were predominant, exploration brought some influence from other civilizations. The exchange of technology was one-sided, as the other civilizations weren't as advanced as the Europeans currently were.